he's now got teammates who, like, probably when they were younger, like, had his poster on their wall.
I just don't think he has it anymore.
Melo's the role he didn't want in Oklahoma.
Carmelo Anthony drills it straight away.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Control the Narrative. 58, episode 58. For those who don't know us, we're a podcast where we control the narrative that the media creates. If you're new around here, I want you to hit subscribe. For all those people watching Blackball, Blackball has been kind of blowing up lately. We got a second straight repeat visitor from the Blackball doc and the Control the Narrative documentary, Control the Narrative podcast, coming up in a few seconds. But also, shout out to all those people who have been subscribed to our YouTube, who have been following us on Instagram, Twitter, and all that shit. It's just been cool to see Blackball take off and get the respect it deserves, and Melo get the respect he deserves, especially after his play the last few weeks. So with all that being said, I'm going to bring on my guy, Chris. Chris, what's going on, dude?
Yo, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Nothing much, man. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day. And, this has also been a long time coming, you coming back on the pod. We got you on, like, what was it, like fucking episode 12 or some shit?
I think it was about a year ago, yeah.
It was, right?
Early.
So it's been a minute. We're starting to get some of my favorite repeat visitors on. So, Chris, you're near the top of the list for that, man. But, we always start with, the fandom and how'd you get into Melo and all that shit. I'm pretty sure we got into that last time, so now that we got that out of the way, I want to know what you think the most underrated Melo moment or game is and why. Always interested to hear people's opinions on this one.
This season or in totality?
Just in his career.
Most underrated game in his career.
Or a moment, or like however you want to take it.
There's a couple that comes to mind. Scoring 33 points in a quarter against the Wolves. I feel like in the moment when that happened, it wasn't made as big of a deal as it was when Klay Thompson broke the record. Game's a little different, so I get it. But still, both of those guys, major accomplishments. They don't talk about it much. It's very much Klay now. They don't talk about Melo's part of it. I obviously broke the record, but it's pretty cool. I also think Game 6 against the Celtics when we advanced. Obviously, the Celtics were coming back in that series.
Remember that shit.
It was very, very tight. It's closer than a lot of people remember. And down the stretch in the fourth quarter, nobody could hit a shot. Nobody. On both teams, Melo hit a three that essentially iced the game for the Knicks. And it's never mentioned as a clutch
and the
shot.
Series. Iced the series.
Yeah, in the series. Yeah, it was pretty much a series clinching shot. No one ever mentions it on any side. Because the Celtics, like, they had momentum. It was really scary for Knicks fans, and it just was like a dead ball moment, and all of a sudden he hits the three, and it kind of put the Knicks over the hump. And
I like that. That's a good one.
Again. So I always thought it was a very big shot that no one talks about.
That's a good one. I remember watching that shit in my dorm room, and the kid next door, his name's Aaron. Shout out to Aaron if he's watching this. He was a Celtics fan. And like me, my friend Matt, and one of our other friends locked the room because the Knicks were up like 20. And dude, forget about not hitting a shot. They couldn't even like get a shot attempt. They turned the ball over like fucking 4 times in 5 minutes or something like that. And then we just heard banging on the door like, yo, let me in, like all this shit. Bro, I was freaking out because I just did not want to go to Game 7 against Pierce, Garnett, and just all that shit. So that was
in the garden or no garden, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It was scary as hell. I like those. It was a good one. 33 points.
Or collapse if we lose the game.
Yeah. By the Klay, I think he scored 37 in that quarter, right? That's why in the quarter.
Yeah, I believe so. Melo's was 33. He tied the record. I'm sorry.
And then Klay, and then like Love, didn't Love have like 36 in a quarter or some shit?
I'm not
Am
sure.
I just making that up? All right, either way. That 33-point quarter was wild, and he finished with 45. It was like, yo, how many points did he score in the game? He only scored 12 points out of the 3 quarters combined. So it is what it is. Speaking of hot Melo shooting and just Melo being on fire, over the past few weeks, maybe 2 weeks, he's had some games where he's shot like 97% from three. And he's fallen back to earth a little bit over the past few games. What do you think the difference has been specifically in the field goal percentage? Do you think it's just shots not going in? Do you see something differently that the Blazers aren't running the offense? Like, why do you think he's fallen back to earth? And again, like some of the games, you just have it going and shit like that. But is there anything more to it, I guess, is the real question.
I'm not sure it's anything major as a scorer, like, especially as you age, it comes and it goes. You see it, especially on like back-to-backs for him sometimes. You see it. But I mean, look, the Blazers have a lot of rotating bodies on the floor right now, and I think that contributes it because I think for a time they had a unit where they had a lot of injuries, but the unit they were playing was the same. So you build up chemistry, and then all of a sudden somebody comes back, and then somebody else comes back, and then it's kind of a revolving door of people, and you're kind of like, okay, as Melo, as anybody on the team, like now I got to get used to Derek Jones Jr. being back or Robert Covington being back. I haven't played with him in 3 weeks, so chemistry is a really big thing. I think it's something that plagued the Blazers in the beginning of the season. I think it's something as they went on this win streak has really helped them. So I would chalk it up to that. I don't think it's anything major. I think in the beginning of the season, he struggled slightly. He found his stride. Now he's cooling down a little bit. I guarantee there will be another spike in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Like people, it was almost like it didn't matter how much Melo was involved in those, like, what was it, like 4 or 5 games where he was just on fire, shooting at least 50%, like 70 from three. Realistically, it was like 40, but I don't think they're doing anything different. I don't think it's, them not using him the right way or anything like that. It's just he was in his zone. He's not in his zone. The back-to-backs is a great point. I should have pulled these numbers up, but I'm sure his numbers in these back-to-backs are not as good as, with a day rest, 2 days rest, whatever the fuck the case is. I think it's one of those things where, especially a scorer like him, when you get into a rhythm, like, funny when you and I were playing basketball last fall and shit, and you just get into a rhythm, right? Like you hit 2 or 3 in a row, and people who don't play basketball and people who don't shoot, like big men or whatever, who are just on the block, you don't really understand what it's like. And I'm not sitting here being like, oh, me and Chris, we're fucking pro basketball players, some shit. But like when you hit 3 or 4 in a row, like, it's like, all right, you see the basket better, whatever. And it's not only like within the game, it's within a few games, within a week, whatever the fuck the case is. So I just think it's just one of those things where it's like law of averages. Melo was shooting really poorly 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden he has like a nice stretch, and now his numbers are closer to what they should be than they were 2 weeks ago. So I think that's all it is. I think, like you said, there'll be another stretch where he has a couple good games, and maybe he doesn't hit 6 shots in the fourth quarter in a row against Philly on national TV, something like that. But I think it's just a law of averages playing out. There was no reason he should have been shooting that poorly and just like playing that poorly offensively, 2 weeks ago and before.
For sure, and I think usage has a lot to do with that too. If you start off, and you're not hitting your shots, and the minutes are going to be there and the touches are going to be there, you can get back into the game.
Yeah,
I think when you have so many injuries, he's had that opportunity. And whereas now, like, we're getting some more bodies back, it's a little bit less.
Yeah, speaking of getting bodies back, thank you for that transition. CJ and Nurk, we talk about this almost every week, their injuries and how does the team look and shit like that. I feel like we really haven't seen the impact of them out until that Wizards game where they just straight up, like, lost offensively against a team who you and I were talking through text, like, should be a lot better than what they are. But we've seen this team at its best, where they won 9 out of 11 at one point without those 2 guys. We've seen them at their worst in the Wizards game last night against the Suns. Suns are obviously a good team, so, you can kind of chalk that up as just a bad night, whatever the fuck the case is. Now that we've seen them with Nurk and CJ out, very good and very bad, how far do you think this team could go when they return, knowing kind of what we've seen out of Gary Trent, Melo, all these guys?
Well, I think if they can recapture the cohesion that they've had in this stretch where they've won so many games, and they get both of those guys back, and they're fully what they should be. They're the 5 seed now. I think their highest ceiling, they could get to 3. And I mean, look, when you get one of those high seeds, it makes it a lot easier to have a deeper run. I think their highest ceiling is a Western Conference playoff berth, and, we'll see what happens. When you make it to the Final Four in the NBA, like, as long as you're not running into the Golden State Warriors with the death lineup, you have a shot. You have a puncher's chance, and as of right now, like, Anthony Davis has this Achilles thing. The Clippers don't really look that much better. You've got these teams that had a lot of success last season who are kind of all over the place, the Mavs, the Nuggets. Jazz look legit, but I think the Blazers could go toe-to-toe with any of those guys in a long series as long as everybody's healthy.
Yeah. I think, not that this was a good thing that they were out, but I just think, like, allowing Gary Trent to shine, and, like, his field goal percentage has been kind of a discussion point across some fans and shit like that, but he's really taken a big step forward. Like, I say this almost every week. He's a star. He's going to sign somewhere this offseason and put up 20 a game and be a legit player. Even, I hate to admit it, but Anthony Simons has been, he still chucks the ball up, but he's been hitting them. So I just feel like all this, people get in their confidence. Nasir Little, Harry Giles had a good few games, even though he a little disappointing. Melo obviously finding his rhythm. I feel like when they get back, hopefully they're all like, all right, I got the ball enough. Now I know where I need to be. And obviously Melo's not going to get as many shots. Obviously Gary Trent is going to be shooting 15 times a game and shit like that. But the fact that they kind of got some sort of a rhythm and now they know where they need to be on the court and just like all these things, taking a minor step back, I feel like is way harder than taking a step forward. And they did take that step forward. So all they have to do now is just like, all right, take 5 less shots a game or whatever the fuck the case is. And yeah, I feel like they're 5 right now, like you said, after losing to the Suns last night. And we keep saying it. All they needed to do was just stay afloat until these guys come back. And it sounds like they're still a few weeks away at the very minimum. But, the Jazz, I just, like, for whatever reason, I just don't see them making a deep run. And by deep run, I mean like conference finals. The Lakers, AD, we have no idea what the fuck's going to happen there. And LeBron has not looked good. The Lakers have not looked good over the past 5 games without him. Clippers, I still think they're legit. I fucking hate to say it, but, like, the Clippers still seem legit. So there is a lot of good competition in the West. But at the end of the day, if CJ and Nurk come back healthy and they could keep everybody else healthy too, because that's important, like Gary Trent going out, whatever, that'd be huge too. If this team could just stay healthy, I legit think they have a shot against anybody.
For sure, man. And I mean, those young guys, Trent and Simons, like, they needed the reps. They needed them.
Exactly.
They got them. You can see that they've improved. And I think the other thing, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, the biggest thing the Blazers needed right before those injuries is they needed balance. They needed floor spacing and balance. And I think giving those young guys the reps, who are ironically the floor spacers and the shooters, you would hope now that they get a full roster of healthy bodies, everyone kind of is comfortable in their role, and you can see like some lineup changes or some things that I think would really help them.
Great point. Yeah, I think it gives stats more options now, hopefully, like you said, now that they all got the reps and they all know where they need to be in the offense and all that shit. So we'll see. It sounds like, again, they're still a few weeks away, and we literally talk about this every week, but it's just, it was never more prevalent than it was in that Wizards game where, like, Dame was, I think, 10 of 30. Melo was, like, 2 of 10 or some shit. You could tell they missed CJ. And even Nurk on offense, just adding a whole nother fucking fold to that offense. So we'll see when they come back. But besides just on the court, play-wise, getting buckets and all that shit, there was a very interesting comment that came out of the Blazers GM. I think he's the GM, Neil Olshey, where he pretty much contributed the team's success. Again, they won 9 out of 11. I think they had won 6 in a row or something like that. But he contributed the team's success to Melo's leadership, not Dame's, not Carmelo Anthony's leadership. And he compared it to Billups in LA with the Clippers and his leadership. So I thought, obviously I ate that shit up. what can you say about Melo's leadership when it's been disregarded for so long, and just like, oh, all he could do is score when we know he's a decent defender, and all the shit he does behind the scenes, we're not in the fucking locker room. But what can you say about Melo's leadership when really people haven't given it credit over the past 5-6 years as a veteran?
I've always thought that there can be different types of leaders.
That's where I was going to go.
Vocal leaders, and I think there are people who lead by example. And to everything that I've known about Melo and heard other people talk about Melo, he is not the vocal, like, rah-rah guy. He is very much someone who leads by example. And there are people who will say, like, well, then that's not a real leader and that's not okay. I kind of disagree. I think, for the Golden State Warriors, a team who's had a lot of success in the last 5 years, Steph Curry is the best player, but I would not say he's their vocal leader. I think Draymond's their vocal leader.
100%.
I think Steph is the one who leads by example. And I'm not going to sit here and say Draymond's the best player on their team and the key to their team, but he's a very important part. So I think in a lot of teams Melo's been on, he's been the one to lead by example. And like I said, every team has different types of leaders that they need. And I think that also as you grow, and you get older, you notice things that you weren't doing, when you were younger. And I think he's in a spot in his career now where he can kind of reflect, especially all the time he spent away from the game for good and bad. He can look back and say, like, well, damn, I really want to give now than when I did back then, because you don't see it as much. And I think you can see that, like, he works out with Brickley in the summer, and he's the one who's working out with Kyle Kuzma and Donovan Mitchell, for example. So I just think I think he's aged, and he's at a point in his career now in life where he wants to lead by example for young players, and just share his veteran experiences.
You literally stole all the points that I was gonna say right out of my mouth. I was gonna say, like, the quiet leader. He's never been the dude who's gonna be screaming on the court or some shit like that, unless it's at Mike Woodson when Mike Woodson's taking a timeout with 8 seconds left and the Knicks up 8 or whatever the case was. But yeah, he's just one of those guys who he goes out and does it. People watch his work ethic, and they just admire it, and it's like contagious and all that shit. And people have talked about his work ethic. It's just one thing. I couldn't have said it any better with like LeBron. LeBron's a vocal leader. He's going to be yelling at guys. Mario Chalmers, all these dudes. Melo's never done that. He's always the guy who's going to go out on the court, do what he has to do, and that's it. Like, there's no more than that. But I feel like Dame's like that too. They're very similar leadership styles, and obviously, Dame is the leader of this team. But Melo, obviously being in the league for 9 more seasons, something like that. And, being another voice besides Dame. Like, obviously people are going to listen to Dame, but just being a different voice. And I was also going to talk about the Brickley shit, where it's like people reach out to him, like Kuzma reached out to him, Mitchell reached out to him. I feel like there were a few others that I'm missing, but it's just like perfect example of, yes, he's not going to be the guy screaming at somebody on the court. And the reason that's such a big deal is because if you aren't, then people don't look at you as a leader for whatever the fuck reason. They don't understand this. I lead by example. Derek Jeter, obviously different sport, led by example. He was never screaming. Like, there's really not a ton of screaming and shit like that in baseball, but he's literally the captain for 20, maybe not 20 years on it. Yeah, I think 20 years for the Yankees, because he went out and led by example. And obviously, he had a lot of good players around him. And I'm sure if the Knicks surrounded Melo with some good players, then it would have been a very similar situation where, maybe they won a championship and they looked at Melo as, the captain, where he goes out, leads by examples, or whatever the fuck the case is. But if it just seems like if you're not Draymond or LeBron screaming at every one of your teammates, people don't look at you as a leader. And for the GM of the team to be like, this is why we're not winning, but this is a huge reason as to why we've been successful. Like, what more can you say? Like, what the fuck can we say that the GM doesn't say about that? So I just thought that was important to touch on.
Yeah, man. And to plug the Knicks, he also worked with Julius Randle. And look what kind of he's having.
Good point.
And I see similarities in some of the things Julius Randle's been doing this season for the Knicks and Melo's game. And the other thing too is that he's now got teammates who probably when they were younger had his poster on their wall.
Harry Giles said that, yeah.
Right, and I think he's done a lot for Gary Trent too. Just being that vet for him. That's what I'm saying. He's in a point in his career now where he can be that vet for somebody. When you're younger, you don't see that as much. And I think when you're a younger player and you're in the locker room, and you see Carmelo Anthony, someone maybe you've grown up, watching your entire life, there's a certain kind of gravitas you have towards him and when he speaks to you, than opposed to maybe Damian Lillard, who you obviously should listen to because he's the leader and the best player on the team. But it's different. You and I grew up watching certain players, and our connection with them is always going to be different than our connection as fans with Zion Williamson. It's just different. And anyone who's been a fan of any sport knows what I'm talking about. Once the guys are younger than you, it's a different connection.
Dude, I remember that when Porzingis was on the Knicks and he was younger than me, I was like, holy shit. And it's just a different mindset you have where it's I haven't been watching this dude for 5-6 years. So that's also a great point. These young dudes who literally grew up idolizing him, and I grew up idolizing him. Whatever Melo says to me, I'm gonna be like, yeah, got it, understood. And Dame, so yeah, let's go with Zion, right? I obviously didn't grow up idolizing him. If Zion told me something, and it is the age thing, but it's not because, I'm not going to listen to someone younger than me. It's because I think it's just the idolized thing where I just listen to whatever somebody I've been growing up, like Derek Jeter. I'm going to go back to Jeter. I guess this is the fucking Jeter episode, but Jeter versus Aaron Judge. Love both of them, but if Jeter said something, it would hold way more weight than Aaron Judge. So I like that. That's a good comparison. I'm sure 2 days ago, we're filming this Tuesday, the 23rd. Oh, wait, today might be the 10-year anniversary. No, I know the 10-year anniversary of the trade was the 21st of the Nuggets trading Melo to the Knicks. Today might be the anniversary of the game versus the Bucks. It is, right? I thought I saw a few tweets. Okay, perfect timing. 10 years to the day. Carmelo Anthony played his first game with the New York Knicks. I know you were hyped. I obviously didn't know you back then, but I can't even imagine what was going through your mind and shit like that. 3 things. What did it mean for the Knicks? What did it mean for New York? And what did it mean for you at the time when all that shit went down, the whole Melo drama?
For the Knicks, it meant everything. I mean, it was putting them back on the map. And obviously, you can't brush off Amari making the decision to come here. He deserves a lot of credit. But, the Knicks were, as much to what they've been up until this season, a clown franchise. Nothing going right. Everything wrong all the time. Nobody wanted to play here. And the first time, we had the cap space, we had a marquee player come play here and decide he wanted to come play here. And then all of a sudden, a couple months later, another one wants to come here and pair with him, something we hadn't seen in over a decade. So it meant everything. There are obviously a lot of fans who feel some type of way about how he came, but hindsight's 20/20. I'm sure if you talk to Melo or anyone involved in the situation, they would tweak how everything went down. But it meant everything for them. It put New York basketball back on the map to some degree for a decade at least. What did it mean to me? Melo was coming home. It was awesome. I got into Melo and basketball really from watching, his freshman year at Syracuse. So obviously, I had New York ties with him then. He always had New York ties, and I was like, this is my guy. This is my, entry into basketball. He ended up getting drafted by the Nuggets. I stuck with him because I thought he was great, and to be able to watch him every night and be on my team, I mean, what else could you ask for, man? It's the best.
Yeah. It was the whole Knicks thing, yes, we have to shout out Amari. If the Knicks don't give him $20 million a year, does he come here? That's what I think about. And you could also, I guess, say the same thing about Melo. The whole reason he wanted a trade before the the deadline because they were going into a lockout season and nobody knew if the salary was going to go up and down. So I get it, but at the same time, the Knicks is always where he wanted to be. He sacrificed a bunch of shit, whether people want to admit it or not. Not only, coming to the Knicks and being like, yo, fuck it, I'm leaving the Nuggets, which weren't a terrible situation at the time in the West. Like, there were some rumors behind the scenes where they were going to let some guys go and there might be a rebuild. So, like, I understand that. But at the same time, they were in the conference finals 2 years prior, less than 2 years prior. So it's not like he left a shitty team to come to the Knicks. Like, no, he left a good situation, we think, to come to the Knicks. And then obviously re-signing with the team for a less than max contract in 2014. People like to leave that detail out. Oh, he only signed with the Knicks for the money. He signed for a less than max deal. So I don't know where that shit comes from. But yeah, man, for me, it was something that I never even thought about, like Melo coming to the Knicks. I was always a Knicks fan. Obviously not diehard, but the Knicks were my favorite team. I rooted for Melo and the Nuggets because of number 15, the real number 15. And when the idea of like, yo, it's either Knicks or Nets happened, I was like, there's no fucking way. And just that first game is something I'll remember for the rest of my life. I don't know why I didn't go to the game, but I didn't. Watched it in my friend's basement, and obviously Melo had like 26 or 27. I think it was 27 and 7. 27 and 7. They won the game. He hit like some clutch free throws, a huge clutch shot at the end. I was just watching the highlights with Carlos Delfino guarding him and shit like that. So that was amazing. But yeah, it was just something that I hadn't even dreamt of. But when it happened, I was like, holy shit, like I could watch this dude on MSG every single night on my cable TV. Go to the game whenever I want. Like, it's not a one or twice a year. I used to go to Jersey, the Izod Center, to watch him play. So all of that shit, it was just something I never even dreamt of. And yeah, it was just an amazing time for the Knicks, me, you, and New York.
It was surreal, man. And he's even talked about it too. Like, he was very young then. And I really do think if you talk to him now and asked him about like how that situation went down and how he would do it differently, I think he would make changes to it. Because he talked about with Stephen A. like how naive he was to the business of basketball.
Yeah.
How he was confident in the Denver situation, but all of a sudden, like as the years go by, he realizes like, oh wait, like coming up this year, like 3, 4, 5 of our top guys, like they're free agents. They might not all come back because I'm in a small market that has never really shown the interest in paying over the luxury tax or giving players the money they want.
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute. And I've tasted success in the Olympics. We've tasted success in the playoffs. I know I'm a top 10 guy. I think he would just know, and I would hope he would know, like if he waited till free agency, that money that he's leaving on the table, he would make it back. And I think it would do a lot for his career too, because the whole rap that people talk about with Melo and the Knicks is he never got enough help. If he came here that way, who knows? He might have.
Yep. So, dude, you're just leading me into every one of these questions. If you were the Knicks 10 years later, would you still have made that trade? Obviously, like you said, hindsight 2020. Do you still make that trade as the Knicks?
Yeah, you have to. You have to. You always have to get the superstar. You don't know where else he could go. And I think, too, there's a lot of pressure. We just saw it recently. The Knicks thought they had 2 superstars in their backyard, like ready to sign on the dotted line. And where did they go? They went across the street. That's a disaster. So if it was like the Knicks and the Bulls in a bidding war for Melo, or the Knicks and, the Lakers in a bidding war for Melo, I don't know if the Knicks would have felt that they would need to be so aggressive. But to know it's the Knicks or the Nets, and look, I know people will always say, like, he said he was never going to sign with the Nets, blah, 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 blah. You don't know. Players say they're not going to go plenty of places all the time. Then they get traded there. They play. Yep. They get wowed. The front office puts a lot of money on a little piece of paper in front of them, and all of a sudden they decide to stay when you thought they'd be on Team X their entire time. You don't know. You don't know.
Well, you remember the Nets and the Nuggets agreed on a deal.
Yes.
And Melo said I'm not signing the extension with them. But in the summer, yeah, I'm sure it's different.
Yeah. I mean, so he says he wouldn't sign the extension, but what if they went through with it anyway and they said, well, we're going to gamble? We've seen that before. We've seen that in the NBA before. We've seen it work. We've seen it not work. And I mean, I think his whole thing was, the Knicks, the brand, and we all get it, but they were moving to Brooklyn. Everything's new. It would have been very shiny and attractive for them to move into that arena with him. They ended up with Darren Williams, not as shiny and attractive.
He was a beast at the time.
Yes.
He had like 1 or 2 really good years in Brooklyn, and then dude fucking fell off a cliff.
To all you young people out there, there was once a debate, Chris Paul or Darren Williams. I know that seems impossible to think about, but it was a serious thing. You were on one side of the fence or the other.
Yep. Utah Jazz, Darren Williams. Last thing I want to touch on is, that's a great point, the fact that it was Knicks or Nets. I don't want to say it made the Knicks panic, but it made them take shit way more seriously than just being like, yo, Melo, wait till the summer. Because, yeah, if the Knicks had Amari, cool. Gallinari, they had a couple nice pieces, yeah. But if the Nets go into Brooklyn with Carmelo Anthony, a top 10 player, at the very least, like leading the way, that's a big deal. Whether, James Dolan, Glenn Grunwald at the time, and all those dudes want to admit it, that would have been a big deal. So I think that's a great point.
And the Nets, too, when they got Darren Williams, they weren't done. They got Darren Williams, and then eventually they got Joe Johnson. They had the room and the assets and the money to do it. So if they would have gotten Melo, they would have been able to add somebody else down the line.
Yep. Before the KG and Paul Pierce trade and all that.
Of course.
Great point. All right, Chris. We reached the end. 31 minutes. I was like, yo, if this goes 20 minutes, like, we're good. We're at 31 minutes right now. So I figured this shit would happen. But at the end of every episode, we allow our guests to control a narrative. Doesn't have to be Melo related. Doesn't have to be basketball related. Not even sports. So I'm going to give you the floor and just let you control a narrative.
I'm going to make it Melo because I've heard some smart basketball people talk about this discussion recently, and he hasn't been mentioned. And it's the sixth man of the year conversation. I understand Jordan Clarkson is in the lead for it. I understand it's very early. I also think Jordan Clarkson deserves it. There's some Shake Milton noise also. But Melo has played very well to be at least mentioned in the conversation. And obviously, like I said, it's early. Let's see how time goes on. But I think if we're talking sixth men, he should be in the ballpark of the conversation. And I've heard a couple of people talk about these awards and not mention him. So where's the love at? Come on.
Fair. That's a good one. And, he started some games while people have been injured, but nowhere near the amount for it to be like, yo, no, he's like a starter and shit like that. So, dude, honestly, after that first preseason game, I was like, book it. Like, how do I bet on this? Like, he scored, 20-something points? And I was like, that's it. Like, this is his role now. He's going to thrive in this. And obviously hasn't been as fluid as maybe I would have liked, but has still been pretty fluid considering in Houston he had 10 games to do it and wasn't going well. Obviously, this year there's been some highs and some lows, but that's interesting. I like that. That's a good one. All right, Chris. Well, dude, appreciate you taking some time out of your day for the second time. Actually, third time, because we'll include the black ball shit in there because you had a lot of good sound bites in there and that shit too. So appreciate the time as always, dude. We're going to catch up one of these days or one of these nights. And as soon as all the snow gets off the ground, let's do some more Berkeley drills.
Absolutely, man.
All right, later, Chris. Appreciate your time.